We move now to our study of the DNA molecule, an amazing molecule, a famous molecule, a molecule that has shaped forensic chemistry most markedly over about the last 30 years or so. DNA is a famous abbreviation for a less familiar term, deoxyribonucleic acid. As we examine DNA, we will become familiar with its structure and also then its implications for how it can be used in forensic criminal investigations. Now, DNA has a relatively short history when it comes to forensic investigations because our knowledge of DNA has really only started to flourish in the last half century or so. It was first used in a criminal trial in Britain in 1987, and it was used to convict a suspect for rape. DNA is used to show that two biological samples, e.g. blood or hair, semen, saliva, come from the same person rather. Now it has an error chance of 1 or less than 1 in about 10 billion. So if you do the maths on this, with about 6.5 to 7 billion people on the face of the earth, it's as good as flawless because its error margin is greater than, if you like, or I suppose it's actually less than, the number of people on the earth. So less than 1 in a billion chance of error. It's very, very good. It's almost safe to assume that it's flawless. It can also show what we call familial links between family members, and we'll have a look at how that can be done a little bit later on. Firstly, let's have a look at DNA's function. DNA is found in the nucleus of every cell. So for you, as an organism made up of millions and billions of cells, in every one of your cells you will find DNA in the nucleus. More than that, a complete copy of your exact DNA is found in every one of those cells. Now, the DNA molecule carries your genetic information. It carries all the genetic information that determines the functioning of individual cells. DNA regulates cell growth and division, which is a very important aspect of organism function. It also controls the biosynthesis of enzymes, in other words, the production of enzymes, and the production of proteins that is vital for cell growth and development. You are now familiar with proteins, so we're seeing that DNA is responsible for the production of the proteins that your body makes. Now, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. Now, molecules of DNA are very, very large molecules. One strand of DNA is about 10 centimeters long. It's only 2 nanometers wide, which means it's about a billionth of a meter wide, or 1/1 millionth of a millimeter. So it's very, very long, but very, very narrow. There's one way to think about it is that if you unraveled all of the DNA in a chromosome, which we'll have a look at a little bit later, you could drag out that DNA molecule and it would reach about 6 feet or 2 meters. So a strand of DNA being 10 centimeters would be a section of it, but if you unraveled a whole chromosome, it's very, very long indeed. Well, what's in a name? The name actually tells us the 3 major parts of the DNA molecule. Deoxyribo comes from the parent name of a sugar called ribose. Now here's ribose. If you examine the structure on the left, you'll notice that down the bottom of the ring there are 2 hydroxide groups. The deoxy means without oxygen. So if you look at the ring structure on the right, you'd notice that there is an H group missing the O. Now, this structure has been reduced and therefore lost its oxygen, and so the structure on the right is the deoxygenated version of the structure on the left. So the structure on the right, if you like, is deoxyribose, and on the left you have ribose. It's oxygenated. Now, you'll be happy to know that you don't need to know how to draw this. There's no alpha or beta isomerism here. You don't even need to be able to recognize this structure in its molecular form. You just need to know that the deoxyribo part of the DNA molecule is a sugar. It's a big part of what we would call the backbone of the DNA. Now, DNA molecules are built on the sugar, but it's not alone. It pairs up with something, and the second part of the molecule is given away by part of the name. Now, we're going to deal with the acid part of DNA. DNA molecules contain many phosphoric acid groups. Phosphoric acid you're familiar with is H3PO4, and there's a structural representation that you wouldn't be so familiar with. Phosphate is in the center, you've got 3 hydroxide groups around the outside, and a doubly bonded oxygen. If you count up your atoms, you have 3 hydrogens, 1 phosphorus, and 4 oxygens, so you have phosphoric acid. You'd remember from our second unit that phosphoric acid is an extremely weak acid. It does not ionize completely. So now we have the 2 components, deoxyribo and acid, so we've got to have a look at that middle part of the DNA name, the last piece to the puzzle. Nucleic. DNA molecules are simply found in the nucleus of every cell. That's why we call them deoxyribonucleic acid, for we find it in the nucleus. So, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid that contains phosphoric. It's also a sugar. It contains deoxyribose, and it lives in the nucleus, so it's nucleic. Therefore, deoxyribonucleic acid is our molecule of interest as we study DNA.